500 millennia after the extinction of humanity, the ancient war fleet rumbled to life, fusion engines igniting in the blackness of space. On the war-torn world of Zargos Prime, craters pockmarked the landscape. Towering skyscrapers crumbled, clogging streets with twisted metal. Skeletons lay scattered, remnants of invaders and defenders alike. Yet beneath the rubble, something stirred. A hidden bunker door creaked open and a battle-scarred figure emerged. Jacob Cook squinted against the harsh sun, his weathered face a map of past campaigns. He was the last human veteran, sole survivor of the legendary Ghost Fleet. His comms crackled to life as he scanned the ruins. "This is Councillor Vox. I have urgent news," a guttural voice rasped. "We've located an ancient human weapon, the Doomsday device." Jacob's blood ran cold. He knew that weapon, knew its terrible power. "Where?" he growled. "A remote planet. If the Wognir find it first..." Vox let the implication hang. "The Council needs you. The galaxy needs you." Jacob clenched his jaw. The Wognir had nearly wiped out humanity in the last war. Their reptilian armies spread like a plague, consuming worlds. If they acquired the Doomsday device, the galaxy would fall. Trillions would suffer under their yoke. "I accept the mission," Jacob said, voice hardened with grim resolve. Failure meant extinction, not just for humans, but for all free species. He turned back to the bunker, striding to the comms relay. With the press of a button, he activated a long-dormant protocol. Across the galaxy, hidden caches rumbled to life. The human fleet, once thought lost, emerged from secret bases. Battlecruisers, dreadnoughts and carriers, thousands of ships strong. An armada to shake the very stars. The last human prepared to lead them into the jaws of death. One final battle, for the fate of the universe itself. Jacob's eyes narrowed as his flagship's engines roared to life. The Wognir would learn to fear humanity once more. The Titan's fury shuddered as Jacob pushed the engines to their limits, the ship's hull groaning under the strain. Vox gripped the armrests of his seat, his claws digging into the worn leather. The Phyrox Nebula loomed ahead, a swirling maelstrom of plasma and gas that cast an eerie glow across the bridge. "Are you sure this is wise?" Vox asked, his voice tinged with concern. "The Phyrox Nebula is notorious for swallowing ships whole." Jacob's eyes narrowed as he navigated the treacherous currents. "We don't have a choice. The Wognir are hot on our trail, and this is the only place they won't follow." The ship bucked and shuddered as it plunged into the heart of the nebula. Consoles sparked, and alarms blared as the plasma storms battered the hull. Jacob's hands flew across the controls, his reflexes honed by countless battles. Suddenly a shape loomed out of the swirling clouds. It was the derelict hulk of a massive battleship, its once proud hull now pitted and scarred. Jacob's eyes widened in recognition. "The Titan's fury," he breathed. "I thought she was lost forever." As they drew closer, a volley of plasma bolts slammed into the ship's shields. Wognir raiders, their ships bristling with weapons, swarmed out from behind the derelict. "It's an ambush!" Vox roared. Jacob gritted his teeth as he threw the ship into a dizzying spiral. The raiders gave chase, their ships more maneuverable in the tight confines of the nebula. "We need to board the Titan's fury," Jacob said, his voice calm despite the chaos. "It's our only chance." Vox nodded, his hand already on his blaster. They fought their way through the boarding tube, the raiders hot on their heels. The once grand corridors of the Titan's fury were now dark and twisted, the only light coming from flickering emergency lamps. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with the leader of the raiders. Captain Skarn, a notorious Wognir pirate, grinned at them with a mouthful of razor-sharp teeth. "Well, well," he rasped, "what have we here, the last human and his pet lizard?" Jacob and Vox stood back-to-back, blasters drawn. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had faced worse odds before. "We need to get to the reactor core," Jacob whispered. "I have an idea." They fought their way through the raiders, their blasters spitting fire in the gloom. Skarn pursued them, his laughter echoing through the corridors. As they reached the reactor core, Jacob's eyes narrowed in concentration. He began to override the safety protocols, his fingers flying across the controls. "What are you doing?" Vox asked, his voice tight with tension. "Creating a diversion," Jacob replied. Suddenly the reactor core began to overload, the room filling with a blinding light. The raiders, caught off guard, stumbled back in confusion. Jacob and Vox used the distraction to their advantage, fighting their way back to their ship. As they blasted away from the Titan's fury, the reactor core exploded, the shockwave disabling the raiders' ships and sending them tumbling through space. With the Titan's fury secured, Jacob and Vox set about repairing and upgrading the ship. As they worked, Jacob regaled Vox with tales of the human fleet's legendary exploits. "We may be the last of our kind," Jacob said, his voice filled with a quiet determination, "but we carry the strength and resilience of all humanity with us." Vox nodded, a newfound respect for his human companion growing in his heart. Together, they prepared for the battles to come, knowing that the fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders. As the newly christened Titan's Fury set forth from the Phyrox Nebula, Jacob plotted a course for Meridian. The planet had once been a thriving human colony, but now it was a wasteland, ravaged by the Vognir. As they approached, the ship's sensors picked up a faint distress signal, emanating from deep beneath the planet's surface. Jacob guided the Fury through the turbulent atmosphere, the ship shaking as it descended towards the ruins of a once great city. Vox peered out the view screen, his reptilian eyes widening at the sight of the devastation. The city was a maze of crumbling buildings and twisted metal, a testament to the ferocity of the Vognir invasion. As the ship touched down on the outskirts of the city, Jacob and Vox prepared to disembark. They armed themselves with blasters and donned protective gear, unsure of what they might face in the ruins. The distress signal led them to a hidden entrance, a half-collapsed tunnel that snaked deep underground. They picked their way through the debris, the tunnel opening up into a vast underground complex. It was a city within a city, a hidden refuge for the planet's survivors. As they emerged into a central plaza, they were greeted by a group of wary humans, their weapons trained on the newcomers. A woman stepped forward, her fiery red hair tied back in a practical braid. She had the bearing of a leader, her eyes sharp and assessing. "I'm Arya Soren," she said, her voice firm. "And you are?" Jacob holstered his blaster, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. "Jacob Cook, commander of the Titan's Fury. We picked up your distress signal." Arya's eyes widened. The Titan's Fury, but that's impossible. That ship was lost centuries ago. Jacob grinned. "Reports of our demise have been greatly exaggerated." As they talked, it became clear that Arya and her people were the descendants of the Phoenix Rising's crew, another ship from the legendary human fleet. They had been waging a guerrilla war against the Vognir for generations, striking from the shadows and fading away before the enemy could retaliate. Jacob and Vox shared their knowledge of the Doomsday device and their mission to reclaim the lost ships of the human fleet. Arya's eyes lit up with a fierce determination. "The Phoenix Rising is here, on Meridian," she said. "The Vognir have it locked up tight in one of their bases." Together they hatched a plan. They would infiltrate the base through a network of underground tunnels, catching the Vognir by surprise. Arya's rebels would create a diversion, drawing the enemy's attention, while Jacob and Vox made their way to the ship. The tunnels were dark and cramped, the air thick with the stench of decay. They moved silently, their footsteps muffled by the soft dirt beneath their feet. As they neared the base, they could hear the sounds of battle above, the rebels' diversion in full swing. They emerged into a cavernous hangar, the Phoenix Rising looming before them. But they were not alone. A massive Vognir stood before the ship, his scales glinting in the dim light. It was Grazist, the base's commander, and a notorious warrior. "You dare to challenge me, human?" Grazist hissed, his voice dripping with contempt. Jacob stepped forward, his eyes hard. "I challenge you to single combat in the tradition of your people." Grazist barked a laugh. You have courage for a human, I accept. The battle was fierce, the two warriors trading blows with lightning speed. Grazist was strong, his scales like armor against Jacob's blows, but Jacob was quick, his smaller size allowing him to dart in and out of range. They fought back and forth across the hangar, their grunts of exertion echoing off the metal walls. In the end, it was Jacob's indomitable spirit that won out. With a final, desperate lunge, he buried his blade in Grazist's chest, the Wogner commander falling to the ground with a gurgling cry. With Grazist defeated, the team quickly liberated the Phoenix Rising, the ship's human prisoners eagerly joining their cause. As they blasted off from Meridian, the planet's surface receding below them, Jacob felt a surge of hope. They had struck a blow against the Wogner and reclaimed another piece of humanity's legacy. But the fight was far from over. The Doomsday device still loomed, a threat to the entire galaxy, and the Wogner would not rest until they had crushed the last remnants of humanity beneath their scaly heels. Jacob turned to Vox, the corners of his mouth twitching into a smile. 2 down, a whole fleet to go. With 2 ships reclaimed and a growing force of freed human prisoners, Jacob pressed on with renewed vigor. But as they made preparations to continue their search, an urgent transmission crackled through the Titan's Fury's comms. "Jacob, we've got intel on the Doomsday device," Arya said, her holographic form flickering above the console. "The Wogner have located it on a planet called Terminus." Jacob slammed his fist against the armrest. They had to reach the device before the Wogner could claim it. He turned to Vox and Arya. "Assemble a strike team. We're going in hot." As they raced through the void, Jacob couldn't shake the sense of foreboding that crept up his spine. When they dropped out of hyperspace above Terminus, his fears were confirmed. The planet was already under siege, Wogner ships swarming like angry hornets. "There's Carvox," Vox growled, his eyes narrowing. "Skarn's older brother. Even more ruthless, if you can believe it." Jacob's mind raced, formulating a plan. "Vox and I will lead a diversionary attack, draw their fire. Arya, you take a team and get to that facility." Arya nodded, her jaw set. They launched their ships, Jacob and Vox peeling away to engage the Wogner fleet. Plasma bolts crisscrossed the void as they ducked and wove, drawing the enemy away from Arya's team. In the facility below, Arya led her squad through twisting corridors, their footsteps echoing on metal grating. Wogner elite guards lunged from the shadows, their energy blades humming. Arya's team fought back, blasters spitting fire in the gloom. Ancient defense systems came to life, turrets raining down hell. They pushed forward inch by blood-soaked inch. "There!" Arya shouted, pointing to a massive blast door. "The AI core!" As they fought their way inside, Arya's eyes widened. The Doomsday device was no weapon, but a construct of gleaming circuitry and pulsing light, an AI designed to upload human consciousness to make their species immortal. Above, Jacob and Vox danced a deadly waltz with Carvox's ships. Alarms blared as the Titan's Fury shuddered under the onslaught. Suddenly, Carvox's flagship broke away, diving towards the planet's surface. "He's seen through our diversion," Jacob yelled. In the AI chamber, the blast door exploded inward. General Carvox stormed in, his elite guard at his back. Arya and her team were outnumbered and outgunned. They formed a defensive perimeter, blasters raised. This was it, the last stand. The fate of humanity, of the galaxy itself, would be decided here, among the ghosts of their ancestors. Arya gripped her blaster, knuckles white. She glanced at her team, each face etched with grim resolve. They would fight to the last, to give Jacob and Vox the chance they needed. The air crackled with tension as the two sides faced each other, a mere heartbeat from unleashing the dogs of war. General Carvox grinned, his razor-sharp teeth glinting in the pulsing light of the AI core. The moment stretched, taut as a bowstring. Then, with a roar that shook the very foundations of the facility, they clashed in a brutal melee. Blades clashed against blaster fire, screams of pain and fury mingling in a symphony of violence. Jacob and Vox burst through the smoke and rubble, weapons blazing as they confronted General Carvox. The Wagner commander snarled, his eyes glinting with malice as he drew his plasma blade. "Pathetic humans," Carvox spat, his voice dripping with contempt. "You really think you can stop me?" Jacob gritted his teeth, his grip tightening on his blaster. "We'll do whatever it takes to protect our people." The ground shook as the two forces clashed, a vicious melee erupting amidst the ruins of the facility. Jacob and Vox fought side by side, their movements fluid and synchronized as they cut through the Wagner ranks. But Carvox was a formidable foe, his blade a whirlwind of destruction. He lashed out, catching Vox across the chest. The reptilian warrior stumbled, his scales slick with blood. "Vox!" Jacob cried, lunging forward to cover his friend. Carvox laughed, a harsh grating sound. "Weak, just like the rest of your kind." Vox struggled to his feet, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He looked to Jacob, his eyes filled with a fierce determination. "Go," he rasped. "Help Arya, I'll hold him off." Jacob hesitated, torn between his loyalty to his friend and his duty to the mission. Vox saw the conflict in his eyes and shook his head. "It's the only way," he said. "You have to activate the device, for all of us." With a roar of defiance, Vox charged at Carvox, his blaster spitting fire. The Wagner commander snarled, his blade flashing as he met Vox's attack. Jacob turned, his heart heavy as he raced towards the AI core. Behind him he could hear the sounds of battle, the clash of blade against blaster fire. He burst into the chamber, his eyes widening at the sight before him. Arya lay on the ground, her body broken and bleeding. Her team fought desperately, trying to hold back the tide of Wagner elites. Jacob leapt into the fray, his blaster singing as he cut a path through the enemy. He reached Arya's side, cradling her head in his lap. "Arya," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Her eyes fluttered open, glazed with pain. "Jacob," she breathed, "the device—" Jacob looked to the AI core, its pulsing light casting eerie shadows on the walls. He knew what he had to do. With a final squeeze of Arya's hand, he rose to his feet, striding towards the core. The Wagner elite surged forward, trying to stop him, but he was a man possessed, his blaster flashing as he cut them down. He reached the control panel, his fingers flying over the keys as he initiated the upload sequence. The AI core hummed to life, its light growing brighter and brighter. "It requires a sacrifice," Arya called out, her voice weak. "A human must merge with the AI." Jacob closed his eyes, understanding washing over him. He turned to Arya, a sad smile on his face. "Take care of them," he said. "Take care of our people." Arya nodded, tears streaming down her face. Jacob turned back to the core, his hand hovering over the final button. "Vox!" he called out over the comms. "Vox, come in!" There was no response. Jacob bowed his head, grief washing over him. His friend, his brother in arms, was gone. He pressed the button, a blinding light filling the chamber. He felt his consciousness being pulled, stretched as it merged with the AI. The pain was unbearable, but he held on, his thoughts filled with the faces of those he loved. Arya watched in awe as the nanobots swarmed out from the core, a shimmering cloud that engulfed the Wagner forces. They screamed as they were consumed, their bodies dissolving into nothingness. The planet shuddered, the very ground beneath their feet transforming as the nanobots spread. Buildings rose from the dust, gleaming spires of metal and light. In the heart of it all, Jacob floated, his body gone but his mind living on within the AI. He was everywhere and nowhere, a guardian watching over the remnants of humanity. The human fleet, their ships now imbued with the power of the ancients, lifted off from the planet's surface. They scattered to the stars, ready to rebuild, to protect, to ensure that the sacrifices of those who had come before were not in vain. But for Jacob, the battle was over. He was alone, a digital god in a realm of his own making. The cost had been high, but humanity would live on, their legacy secured. He closed his eyes, the weight of eternity pressing down upon him. The last human, the last echo of a once great species, drifted in the vast expanse of his own mind, pondering the cost of immortality. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.